This is Barry Brown, the Science Librarian. We're going to look for information related to ecology topics for Bio 370. So we're starting at the library page, and if we know the resource we want to go into, then we could go directly to the database link. If we want to find information on research articles related to ecology, particularly peer-reviewed articles, then going to Web of Science is going to be a great database to start with. So I'm going to click on databases, and again, if we know the database we're after, we can just go alphabetically to it. If we didn't know what database we were after, we could look at some of the subject groupings of databases. So under databases and then the humanities and sciences, here's bioscience, but we're going to jump straight to the W's, and we're going to go into Web of Science. So Web of Science is probably the most popular science database. Lots of science researchers use it. It's great for biology and ecology. And we're going to take our topic and break it down into keywords. But just as an example, if my topic is how is climate change expected to impact western Montana ecosystems, if I put that whole thing in as a natural language search, so if I put that whole topic in just as I would list it as a title, and I look for results for that, I don't have any luck. So if I go back to sometimes I will have luck. This database is pretty good at parsing phrases, but that's just too many words that are not found near each other. So if I want to adapt that, what I'm going to look for is the main keywords. Climate change is obviously one of my main set of keywords, and then Western Montana ecosystems. Impact is a kind of a fuzzy term. Impact effects would not be a very good search terms to start out with, but climate change, Western Montana ecosystems, those would be some main keywords. And when I send that, I have 28 results. And that's a pretty good start, and in fact I see some pretty good relevant results. It indexes over 12,000 peer-reviewed journals. Also, you'll find some conference proceedings, but again, primarily it's articles. So this may actually be enough, but if I want to go back and improve my search, what I will do is I'll take my different facets of my topic and put them on different lines of the search box. So right now I've got this one box. I can click on add another field, and now I could put in Western Montana, and then I could also add another line and put in ecosystems, but that's going to narrow my search. And really, if I'm looking for ecosystem effects, maybe I'll find studies about organisms or wildlife or snowpack. So I'm not going to constrain my search by narrowing it right now with ecosystems. I'm going to send climate change in Western Montana. I can also at this point add some related terms. So if I'm interested in climate change, what is a related term to that? The obvious one is global warming. Now, I'm not going to know all the keywords right away. I'm going to do some searching. I'm going to look at the results, and that will provide me with some more keywords. Maybe I'll go to Google and do some searching. If I went to Google and looked at climate change, I'd probably go into Wikipedia, and I would easily see some related terms such as global warming. So Western Montana, what would be another term for that? I might not know offhand, but if I do some initial searching, maybe I would see that, okay, a lot of studies are done in Glacier National Park. Maybe I would think of Northern Rockies. Sometimes people say Northern Rocky Mountains. I want either this phrase, climate change, or that phrase to occur with one of these other phrases, Western Montana or Glacier National Park or Northern Rockies. So now instead of 28 results, I've greatly broadened my search. I've got 615 results. So I've got a lot of results. Some of them look related to my topic and seem useful. Some of them look pretty irrelevant. Although I am seeing some good results on this first page, I'm seeing about half the results look of interest. So what am I going to do at this point? What I could do if I want to make my search a little bit more relevant, or even if I want to broaden it, I'm going to go back to search. One of the ways I can broaden my search is we talked about related terms, climate change or global warming. If I look at some of my results, I'm going to see that sometimes researchers use climate change or climate changes. Sometimes they use climatic change or climatic changes. I can use a stemming character, a wildcard character in this database, and that's the asterisk. So with the asterisk, at the point where the word varies, I'll get all the variant endings. So climate, climatic, change, changes, Global warming, I don't really see any variant endings. And then for Northern Rockies, I'm going to stem that so I get Northern Rockies or Northern Rocky Mountains. This is going to greatly increase my results. Before I do that, I'm going to add quotes around Northern Rockies. This database looks for the words next to each other, but it also allows them to be a little bit further away than just a phrase, which is probably not a problem with some of these terms, but with Northern Rockies, it may be a bit of an issue. So I'm going to put now I'm liking the results a little bit better. I've got the most recent articles listed first. If I want to go into those, I can start clicking on the links to get to the article, but I can also do some sorting if I want. So I've got the newest first, and definitely I'm going to want to look at the most recent literature, but I could also quickly sort by relevance, and that's going to give me results that are most related to my topic, or at least what this database thinks are most related. And so some of these are looking pretty good. Some of them are more kind of paleo things that I probably am not interested in, but some of them look pretty good. The other sort that I can do, this database is not only an index to articles from over 12,000 journals and going way back in time, going back to the 1900s, so over 100 years of literature. I can also sort by time cited. This database analyzes which articles are citing other articles. So time cited, I don't know why I'd ever want the lowest cited articles, but the highest cited articles are likely to be classic papers in that field. So by doing this, this is actually a way to get some very important papers. So warming and earlier spring increase, western U.S. forest wildlife activity, that looks pretty good. Meta-analysis of tree line response. Some of these look of interest, and they've been cited an awful lot of times. Okay, so that's the way that I can go through a lot of literature without having to page through page after page. I can do some sorting. If I want to go back and be the most restrictive, I've kind of alternately broadened and narrowed, and that last time I simultaneously broadened with the stemming characters but then narrowed with quotes. Here's another thing I could do. I could add another field and add back in ecosystems if I want to try that, but if I don't want to constrain myself with just that word, I can narrow by field, and I can require that these words appear in the title of the article. So instead of 400 results, I'm going to greatly narrow my search. Now I only have 18, but when I look at these results, and I've still got it sorted by my last choice, which was time cited, all of these look right on topic with global warming and western Montana ecosystem. So I'm very happy with the relevance of this search. Every search is a trade-off between precision, where every single thing is relevant, and comprehensiveness, where you don't miss any of the important literature. At my broadest search, I was probably a little bit too comprehensive. At this point, I'm probably a little too precise, and you'll want to work out a happy medium. Okay, but at this point, I can now start clicking into articles that are of interest. So a century of climate and ecosystem change in western Montana, bingo, that looks like one of the best articles from fairly recent 2010. So I'm going to click on the link. That's going to take me to the article. All of the databases are configured to go to the articles. Occasionally it doesn't work, and there's some alternative ways to get to articles, but in this particular case, it looks like I went to a publisher site. I'm looking at the abstract. I can now click on the PDF link, and I've got the article. I could print it, I could download it. If I go back to the database, let me point out that if I grab that article and I read it and it was just what I thought it was going to be, so I used the title and the abstract to get a sense of what it was about before I clicked into it. Your attention is your most limited resource, so you definitely want to not spend time with any articles unless they're very relevant to your topic. But that looked like a really relevant article. So I would go to its bibliography, and that would take me back in time. I would see some of the studies that this research is citing, so I would go back in time before 2010. Now in this database, Web of Science, I can also click on the studies that are citing it. So since it was published in 2010, here's 23 more studies that have cited it, and they're more recent studies. So that may give me some relevant results, and I may not have found them with my keyword search. And these may or may not be worth spending time with, but that's another way to find literature, and one of the reasons this database is so popular with researchers. So when we're at the point where we're clicking into articles and happy with our results, we may want to save some of the citations to a citation management program. So at that point, I would go through my list of results, and the ones that look most relevant, I would mark, and I would then save them to the citation management program. So in this case, RefWorks, and I would send to that program. If I already had it up and running, it would go directly into it. If I don't, then it asked me to sign in. So I would sign in with my account, and that would throw the citations into it. If you have not created an account, you could create a new account at that point. And RefWorks is one of the databases in the library's A to Z menu. Okay, last thing I wanted to show you in Web of Science, if I go back to my search, and if I deliberately keep my search very broad, so I had previously restricted it to title fields. If I go back to topic, which is keywords spread across title, abstract, subject headings, or descriptors, if I have this broad search and I want to use the results to find out what are the journals from these results, what are the journals that have the most articles. So in this database, I can come down on this lower left and click on the Analyze Results. And Analyze Results, I could see the most prolific authors in this field, which might be of interest. But in this case, I'm going down to Source Titles, which is another term for journal titles. And I'm going to click on Analyze. And of those 410 results, it's showing me these journals have this many articles in them from this search result. As you're doing your search and you're finding the best articles for your topic, you may want to browse the table of contents of the most recent issues of these journals that tend to have the most articles on this topic. So I may want to go to these top 4 or 5 journals and browse them directly. And that may give me some recent research related to my result, because no database search is going to be perfect. So I've looked for my topic long enough, I'll know the best journals. I may want to go directly to some of those in addition to using the database. Hopefully you have enough information to get started using this database. And of course, whenever you're using library resources, if you have a question, you could contact the library with questions. And on the library page, there's a Contact Us button. You could email a question, or you could call us. Under Contact Us, there's the phone number, and whenever the library's open, somebody could answer your question that way. Okay, good luck finding information on ecology-related topics in Web of Science.